So last year Hoka released the Carbon X and it was met with mixed reviews, but this year we have the Carbon X2 and with it brings a lot of big improvements. So after various runs adding up to 100 kilometers, I'm ready to give you my full review of the Hoka Carbon X2. So throughout this review I'll be using my Stoplight method, and with that, green means that there are more good than there is bad, yellow means that there's about equal plus and minus, and red means that there are more cons than there are pros. So I did buy the shoe with my own money, so like all my reviews, all the opinions are my own. But with all that stuff out of the way, let's get into the review. So let's start with the upper. So as far as the fit goes for the Carbon X2, I thought that the length was perfect, I didn't have any heel slipping, and I thought that it was roomy enough in the toe box, and I just thought it actually fit really well. My midfoot was secured without having to crank down the laces, and I think that the gusseted tongue helped hug my foot and secure it even further. I always felt that this shoe was secure even when going around sharp corners. So I wouldn't call the upper of the Carbon X2 plush, but it is lightly padded to keep your feet more comfortable over long distances without adding too much weight. One thing I'm not a fan of is the thin tongue. I wish they would have used the same tongue as the first Carbon X, which was soft and lightly padded. Although the mesh is decently thin, the holes aren't the biggest, so you're able to feel the breeze through them, but they aren't the most breathable shoes out there. And after a long run in hot weather, your feet will be quite sweaty by the end. Alright, now let's move down to the midsole. As is true with most Hokas, or most shoes nowadays it seems, there is a lot of cushion in the midsole. With 35mm in the heel and 30 in the forefoot, there is plenty of protection underfoot. So the midsole in the second version of the Carbon X is softer than the first version in my opinion, but it is still a firm foam. This firm foam helps it feel responsive, but it is also a bit dead feeling in my opinion. Even with the bottom-loaded carbon plate, it lacked that bounce that most of the other carbon-plated shoes have. So although it was a bit firm and a bit dead feeling, it did have a very smooth ride. The famous Hoka Meta Rocker and the stiff plate helped allow for a really fluid heel-to-toe transition. It also felt smooth whether I was going slower paces or faster paces, but definitely felt the smoothest at an up-tempo effort. Thanks to the carbon plate and the slightly firmer foam, I think that the midsole will hold up a lot better than most super shoe midsoles. Especially compared to ZoomX, this shoe seems to be more durable and you can get more miles out of it. Alright, now let's talk about the outsole. Unfortunately, the outsole of the Carbon X2 is essentially the same as last year's. It has no actual rubber at all and is just an extension of the firmer rubberized EVA that makes up the outer part of the midsole. Last year's model got beat up after less than 30 miles, and after a few hundred miles you could get to the carbon plate. With the plate being closer to the outsole on the second version, I could definitely see that being a major issue again. Since there is no actual rubber patches on the outsole, it will hold up alright on road and treadmill, and even dirt road, but on trails and thick grass it won't do too much for you. So it's not as light as the Rocket X or some other carbon plated racers, but at 8.5 ounces it is lighter than a lot of Maximal shoes and is close to the weight of the Alpha Fly. I would prefer to see it closer to 8 ounces or less, but I'll take sub 9. Alright, now let's go into the run type stoplight portion of my review, where I will rate how this guy performs with speed day, everyday, long run day, and recovery day. Starting with speed day, the Carbon X2 gets a green light. So this shoe was designed for up-tempo runs and race days, and I think it does a good job at those types of runs. When doing some fartlicks, progression runs, and repeats, the carbon plate with that rocker just felt really smooth and speedy. So although it isn't personally my favorite speed day shoe, I think there are a lot of people that will really like this. For everyday runs, the Carbon X2 gets a yellow light. So I think there are a lot of people out there that could use the Carbon X2 as a daily trainer and would really like using it as such, especially if you used the Carbon X, the first version, as a daily trainer. But for me personally, with the stiff carbon plate and the durability concerns with the outsole, and I'd rather have something that's just more durable if I'm putting my everyday miles on it. For long run day, it gets another yellow light. So although this shoe has a lot of cushion and is designed for going long distances, I found that after doing some long runs in it, my legs kind of felt beat up afterwards. And this isn't something I felt in a little while, since I've been doing a lot of long runs with those softer and bouncier midsole shoes that just seem to keep your legs a little bit fresher. I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that would like to run a marathon or ultramarathon in this shoe, but for me personally, I'm just too obsessed with that soft and bouncy foam, and this just isn't quite there for me. For recovery runs, the Carbon X2 gets a red light. So if you haven't got the hint already, this shoe isn't super soft, nor is it flexible. For recovery days, I tend to like shoes that are very pillowy, and the Rocket X2 is not that for me. Plus, with that rocker and the carbon plate, it does tend to make you want to go faster during your runs, and that can be a problem when you're trying to keep it nice and slow and easy. So I would say that the Carbon X2 is definitely an improvement from the first Carbon X, thanks to the more secure upper, the tweaked midsole density, and the improved ride. However, the carbon-plated racing shoe scene has gotten very crowded over the past year, and I just think that there are better options out there than the Carbon X2, though they do tend to cost more, but still I think there's a lot better technologies. And one of those other shoes that I prefer over the Carbon X2 is from Hoka, and that is the Rocket X. I found this shoe to be lighter, the midsole was softer, it was bouncier, and I just really preferred using this guy for workouts and kind of race pace efforts over this shoe. Also, since I do have the Rocket X and the Mach 4, I prefer to use the Mach 4 as my up-tempo trainer and my Rocket X as my race day shoe, so the Carbon X2 just doesn't really fit into my rotation when I have those other two shoes. So if you're somebody that's looking for one Hoka that can kind of do it all, it can be your up-tempo trainer or your race day shoe, then the Carbon X2 might be good for you. But for me, I personally think it's the jack of all trades but master of none, as it does fall short in some of those key areas. For the Carbon X3, I really want to see Hoka use that same soft foam that they have in the Rocket X and put it in this stack height in this design. I think that they would really have a winner on their hands. So at $180, the price of the shoe I'd say is actually pretty fair, as it is one of the cheaper options as a carbon plated racing shoe, but $180 is definitely a lot to spend on a shoe, especially with one that doesn't have the best outsole durability. So looking at the results here, I'd say that there isn't enough green for me to give the Carbon X2 the go-ahead, but instead it's a caution, as in you should consider your use cases and what you like in a shoe before going out and buying the Carbon X2. Thanks for watching my review, I hope it helped you out. I do have my full review of the Mach 4 coming out, subscribe so you don't miss that. And if you haven't seen my full review of the Rocket X, make sure to watch that as well. I'll see you next time, and as always, keep on running.